Good evening. The time is 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. This is your host, Buffy Williams. You're listening to the New Heights Show on Education. Tonight's topic is the IEP process.
Hello, everyone. This is Danielle Washington coming to you live from Miss Buffy Williams' office. We're just sitting around thinking about life and trying to become better people tonight, so check us out. Welcome back. You're on the air with Buffy Williams, and you have been listening to the New Heights Show on Education. We have been discussing the show's purpose on mission.
Right now, you might be struggling through your classes or even failing them. You might be worried that you may not finish high school. There might have even been a thought that you may not be smart enough. Well, the New Heights Educational Group begs to differ. We not only think you are smart enough, but with our help, you will complete your high school diploma. The New Heights Educational Group strives to improve your academic success through its tutoring services. To learn more, please visit newheightseducation.org and contact us. New Heights Educational Group, educational resources to help reach your goals.
I'm David Smith, founder of Silicon Valley High School, and we're proud to bring you these New Heights Educational Group radio shows because we share the same belief that quality education should be accessible and affordable to everyone, everywhere. We also believe learning should be as entertaining as possible, and here at Silicon Valley High School, we're proud to report that over 96% of students would recommend our video-based, self-paced, teacher-supported online courses to a friend. Learn more about our fully accredited, entirely online high school and our $95 courses today at svhs.co. And I hope you enjoy the show.
Welcome back. You're on the air with Buffy Williams, and you have been listening to the New Heights Show on Education. We have been discussing the show's purpose on mission.
This is your host, Buffy Williams. You're listening to the New Heights Show on Education. Tonight's topic is the IEP process, laws and guidance for special education and rehabilitation services. But before we get into this week's show, I want to do a little recap of last week. On last week, we talked a little bit about the history of education reform and how we have moved from forms of education to kind of where we are today with public schools, private schools, charter schools, unschooling, and how families want to structure the school process and the education process and how we can make that better for our students. The purpose of the IEP process is to assist educators, parents, and local and state government agencies in implementing the required parts of Part B of the Individuals with Disabilities Act in Education. And those guidelines are designed to for preschool age children. This IEP process that we're going to talk about tonight is not covering the Individualized Family Services Plan for infants and toddlers, but it does include preschool age children. So again, it's just designed to assist the educators and the parents and local and state governments in giving them a framework of what should be included in the IEP process. And all of the information that we'll be sharing tonight will be coming from the U.S. Department of Education with the assistance of the National Information Center for Children and Youth with Disabilities. And if you want a copy of the information, you can go to ed.gov, and they have versions of this information in Braille, large print, audio cassette, or on disc. So you can also go online, and again, it's available at ed.gov, that's ed.gov. And so what we want to talk about is the Individual with Disabilities Act offers 10 steps on ways to develop a IEP process. So what else that are involved in the IEP process? So there are 10 steps. First, children are identified as possibly having a special needs or any kind of related services. And so with that, the Child Find System, the state must identify, locate, and evaluate all children with disabilities in the state who needs special education or special education related services. And the Child Find system can evaluate the children. Parents can also ask for a referral or request an evaluation. So it could be either or. And this request can be verbal or in writing, but they must have parental consent in order to evaluate your child. The second step is the child is actually evaluated. So first you identify the student as possibly needing services for special needs or special education or related services. And then you want to step into actually having the child evaluated. And the evaluation will be used to decide if the child is actually eligible for special education or related services, and to help make the appropriate decisions about the educational programs. Then after the child is determined, been evaluated, eligibility is determined, and there's a special group of qualified professionals that look at the child's evaluation, and then the parents are asked to come to the hearing. Then the child is actually found as being eligible for services. Then he or she then has a 30 calendar day in order to be determined by the IEP team as to what will be written in the actual IEP process for the child. Then the IEP meeting is scheduled and all the participants are contacted, and anyone who has any kind of special knowledge as it relates to the child will be invited to the meeting. At the IEP meeting, then the meeting is held and the actual IEP is written during that meeting. Everyone gathers and talks about the needs of that child, to include the teacher, any administrators or any special education teachers, and anyone that is deemed to be a part of the IEP team. Then the services are actually provided to the students and carried out. And then after that process, the student is monitored and a report is given to the parent. And this monitoring of the student's progress can be in the form of the 9-week progress report or the 9-week report cards for the students. Once you are in the meeting and you're establishing your IEP process, they discuss the services that will be provided to that child based on whatever the evaluation has deemed as appropriate or as a need for your child. Then the progress of your child's performance is measured, and it's generally during the same time that any other student would receive a progress report, which would mean anyone who is non-disabled, their progress would be monitored in the same way that someone who has an IEP would be monitored. And so that may be in the form of the 9-week progress report or when the student receives their actual report cards. And so at that time, the IEP process after that can be reviewed, and goals and placement are in play at that point. And so usually the IEP is reviewed within 1 year of the child actually being placed on the IEP process. And then the final step is for your child to be reevaluated if necessary. And generally, reevaluation happens every 3 years. But once the IEP process is completed, you want to take a deeper look at has it been done correctly? Are there things that should be incorporated that weren't incorporated initially? And so once an IEP is implemented, is you want teaching to be improved through that process, the learning and results of that, and anything that is special and unique for your child, you can look at those things more closely, and also try to work with the administration on how can you enhance the IEP process and look at what things are working and what things are not. But there are certain things that, of course, that must be included within that. And so you want to look at what is the current performance of your child. So those types of things can be determined by their classroom tests, their assignments, their individual tests in a particular area. And once you've decided that, you can discuss these things with the team, and you want to pay close attention to, what are the short-term goals for your child? What are the benchmarks that they need to make in order to reach their goals? And any special education or related services that may assist them, or any kind of modifications that they need within the classroom. And you want to make sure that their participation with non-disabled students is included in the IEP process. This is a must. And actually, how are they participation? What is their participation like on the state level and the district-wide tests? That is also something that needs to be monitored. And also, what dates and places, like who must provide services, who will be providing services to your child, and how long will that actually last? And so these are some of the things that definitely you want included in the IEP process. And you also want to look at any transitional services that your child may need once the IEP process is ended. And in different states, these are at different ages. So it could be at the age of 14 or the age of 16. And is there a need for any transitional services for your child after they leave that particular school? And so again, the age of majority is only in some states, so you have to look at your state to see what is the age of majority and when they will need that information regarding the transitional services after they leave school. And then in the end, of course, you want to make sure that the progress the child has made from the time that the IEP process has been implemented until the end of that process. So the IEP process is something that a lot of our listeners are very interested in. So I want to hear from you all as to, do you think that the IEP process has been effective in your state? And if so, what things were the most effective and what do you find the most beneficial? And so that we can discuss and have a conversation about states and schools and school systems, and if you feel like those things are being implemented in a way that is very beneficial for your child. And when you look at the IEP team, one of the things I want you to keep in mind is that there are particular people that need to be on your team: provider or regular school teacher, the person who can interpret or evaluate the results of the IEP process, and others who have special knowledge or expertise about your child. And of course, the parents also need to be included, and the regular education teacher. A school system representative and any transitional service agency representatives also need to be involved with that process. And the law just tells us what information must be included, and it does not specify actually how the IEP should look. No one approach or appearance in the IEP process exists. Each state can decide on their own what the IEP is to look like, and they can design forms. But across the United States, many different IEP forms exist. But you want to make sure that as a parent, that you make sure that your regular education teacher and the special education teacher is involved. Also, if individuals who are representing the school system are also involved, in any regular education teachers. And then some things that your child may require some of the following related services in order to benefit from special education. So there are things like auditory services or counseling services or early identification and assessment of students with disabilities or any medical services, occupational therapy, or parent counseling and training or physical therapy. Also, psychological services and recreation services. And then we also have some social work services that are in schools, some school health services, and speech and language pathology services that are also available. Also, sometimes transportation may be an issue, and so you want to look at how are these things beneficial for my student, and what can, or my child, and what can my child benefit